We're going to kick things off with a finished object. Actually, this is a brand new project and a finished object. I haven't talked about it at all on the podcast yet. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Nitty Natty. Welcome to episode 293 of the Love and Stitches podcast. It is a beautiful, sunny, somewhat fall-like day here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I have lots to talk about today. I keep thinking I'm not going to have anything to talk about because I've been a little more focused on like singular projects even in this last week, but yet somehow there is always more knitting and crochet to talk about. So first I want to talk about what I'm wearing today. So I am freezing right now. So I was like, let me throw on something to warm up a little bit. I'm going to film a podcast. So why don't I put on something that is hand knit? So I grabbed this out of my to be washed pile. And this is the Long Summer Cardigan by Joji Locatelli. I finished this in like August of 2021. Hold on, I actually wrote it down, but I think I have the wrong dates on here because it says I made it from August 21 to December 21. Did I finish this in 3 months? That actually might be right. So I finished it several years ago. And when I first finished it, I was wearing it all of the time. And I really haven't been reaching for it lately. And not just like the last 2 years when we've been traveling, but even before that, like when we were living in New York, it wasn't something that I pulled out very often to wear, at least in the last like year or so that we were living there. So I'm wearing it today because I'm trying to decide if I'm going to hang on to it or maybe donate it, let it go, or give it away. I'm kind of leaning towards keeping it for now because if I can't say for sure that I don't want something, especially when it's like a hand knitted thing, I'm going to hold on to it for a little longer, but it's like kind of, note in the back of my head that maybe this is not working in my wardrobe for one reason or another. I think one of the things that is starting to bother me is it's not really staying on my shoulders anymore. I don't know if that's because I made it like a little too small here in the arms, or it's just stretching out, or it's always done that. And now I'm wearing a different style t-shirt underneath it, which is bulkier, and it's just not working like that. And the other thing is, it's like really long. And I think when I made it, we were still in like the skinny jeans phase, and now we're not in the skinny jeans phase. And I don't really know how to balance a long cardigan. Like it goes to just the top of my knees with the outfits that I'm currently wearing without looking just like a blob with having wider leg pants and this. I don't know. Is this really a problem? It's not a problem, but it's something that I'm thinking about. And I find the best way to figure that out is just to wear it and see how I like it. I made this with Moonglow Yarn Company 80/20 Superwash Merino Nylon. I think it's a base that they were thinking about discontinuing then. So I really love it for that reason. And it's a fade. I think you can kind of tell here, but you can really tell in the body. So much fun. Okay, we have 3 projects to get into today. I have some fun questions I'm going to be answering and more stuff to talk about. So let's get into it. We're going to kick things off with a finished object. Actually, this is a brand new project and a finished object. I haven't talked about it at all on the podcast yet. And that is these Ruffle Socks. This is the Ruffle Socks pattern by Pearl Soho. I've made some modifications. I'm going to talk about them in just a second, but I have been a little bit secretive about this project. So I started it just this past week on October 12th, and I finished it on October 18th. So when you're really focused on something, you can get a pair of socks done. I couldn't believe how fast these fell off my needles. Again, I was really singularly working on these for many, many days. So that helped, of course. So I am making these for a gift for my sister-in-law. And my plan is to make these, obviously, are for her. And then I'm going to make a matching pair in a baby size because she is expecting her first baby. And I thought, how cute would that be for them to have matching ruffle socks? So I've been a little quiet about sharing it. I don't want to share it on my Instagram because it's possible that she could see it on my Instagram. So only for YouTube for right now until I gift these to her. So I was looking for a ruffle sock pattern. There's actually so many fun options out there on Ravelry. I have made Summer Lee's shorty like ruffle sock pattern before for myself. They're super cute, but I was looking for something a little more like subtle, a little more classic looking. I showed these at knit night this past week, and somebody said that they remind them of the socks that they used to wear like in middle school or elementary school. And they really do, but I know a lot of people are wearing these right now. So they just have a really subtle ruffle, a little bit of rib, pretty like a medium length leg. I did sub in a Fish Lips Kiss heel. They, I believe, have an afterthought heel, which I didn't care to do. And then I just did my own toe as well. Basically, I just needed this part of the pattern, which was done really, really well, really, really clever. So some things I modified in this pattern. The yarn that they use must be really, really fine because the gauge they were saying was 9.5 stitches per inch. I don't know about you, but I do not get 9.5 stitches per inch when I am knitting socks. And I didn't think I wanted to make myself do that. I already knit my socks on a US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle. I own a 0, but even if I went to a 0, I don't think I could get that gauge. So I took out a couple of socks that are similar yarn, which is just a 75-25, and measured my gauge, and I realized my gauge is 8.5 stitches per inch, which I thought it was, but I just wanted to make sure. So I picked a size based off of my gauge of 8.5 stitches per inch, basically going, I'll knit a smaller size. I think I ended up first casting on either the adult small or the like child large. This pattern has several different sizes, from kid size up to like a large adult size. And so I ended up picking one of the smaller sizes with my larger gauge, aiming for like an adult medium. And I cast it on, I started it. I think I got like this far and I just thought it just looks too big. So I tried it on myself. Luckily, my sister-in-law and I are similar in size. I tried it on and it was really gaping on my ankle. And I just thought, I don't know, this is just not, I just don't think this is going to work. And I'd rather stop now and reconfigure it before I get any further. So I ended up making sort of a custom size. Basically, I figured out I want to have 60 stitches when it gets to the leg. So how many stitches do I need to cast on for a ruffle? If you've ever done a ruffle before, whether you're doing it from like the cast on or at the end, it's done with just a huge drastic change in stitch count. So you're either casting on a ton of stitches and then decreasing them dramatically, like in this pattern, or you are, starting with a fewer amount of stitches and then increasing them dramatically. And that's how you make a ruffle. It's really fun. So I figured out I wanted 60 stitches, and then I just did some ratios. I did a little bit of algebra, I guess, because I did, okay, if the size that I was making had this many stitches for the cast on and this many stitches is how it ended up, then I need X for the cast on and this many and 60 stitches to end up. And I cross multiplied and divided. I have done cross multiply and divide for so many things in knitting. I ended up finding my stitch count. I did put all this information in my Ravelry page without revealing like how to actually do the ruffle and the pattern, because it is a paid pattern. So if you are interested in that and like how to figure it out, you can go onto there and see what I did. I knew I was gonna need to do some messing with the pattern to create the baby size later anyway, so it was kind of perfect that I got to get a little intro to that. So I ended up with doing the ruffle for my custom size, 60 stitches here. I actually did do a little bit of increasing. This is one of my favorite things to do with short row heels, is you add a few stitches like right before the heel. And what that does is it gives you more rows in your heel, which then gives you more depth in the heel. And it also gives you more stitches right here on the foot, where a lot of us need more stitches, right? We may have smaller legs and ankles and narrow feet. I have narrow feet, but I still have like a pretty high, I don't know if I have a high arch, but I have a lot of, what is this called? I have a large measurement like around my heel, like top of foot area, which is this measurement right here. So adding more stitches here is really helpful because then you get more stitches for this area and more depth in your heel with more rows. And then after the heel, you can decrease them if you want to. I actually didn't end up doing that in this one because I thought that my sister-in-law might like a few more stitches. So it's 60 stitches here. I increased 4 stitches before the heel. I did my fish lips kiss heel, just like normal. And then I kept those 4 extra stitches in the foot. So this has 60, this has 64, still around like an adult medium sock. So this is the first pair of socks I've ever knitted for her. And I did do the foot length, like just based off of her shoe size. So I'm really hoping that they fit her. They came out so cute. The yarn I ended up using, so I actually, if you watched my fall project plans video, you'll know that this is the first project that I had on my list. So check, one thing is done, but I didn't have yarn for it yet. So I went to the yarn store and I wanted a light neutral color. I was thinking white, cream, something like that. And I ended up buying a bright white yarn. And then I got home and I hemmed and hawed for a few days thinking like, I don't know if bright white is really the best idea for these socks. And then I was cleaning out our van because there's still stuff in there. We're still working on cleaning it out. And I ended up finding some leftover yarn from a top that I made earlier this year. And this is yarn from 29 Bridges. I'm gonna get, I can feel that the label is in here. So hold on, let me get it. Let me get it out. This is yarn from 29 Bridges and the color is called Linen. So it's just a really nice light color. I made a crochet top called, I can picture it right now, the Florence Tee, I think is what it's called, by Courtney Clark. Turned out super cute, but I had overbought my yarn because I just didn't know how much I was going to need. So I still had 1 full skein plus like a half skein of this left. So I thought, perfect, I will have plenty for a pair of shorty socks and a pair of baby socks. And I actually have all of this still left in this color. So I should have plenty of yarn. So once I realized I had that color, I thought even better, just sort of a light beigey color. I don't even know what to call this, linen. And they turned out great. I'm really happy with them. They're already washed, they're already blocked. I'm thinking I might make some kind of a little card to go in here that just says like how to care for them. It was really important for me to get yarn that she could put in the washing machine. So it'll just say like machine wash cold, lay flat to dry, and hopefully these will be easy care for her. Okay, did I forget anything? Yeah, so now that I finished that, I finished those a couple of days ago. And I'm like, let me give myself a break. Let me work on some other projects for a minute. And then my goal for this week is to start on the baby socks. So I'm going to be taking essentially the same ruffle pattern and then subbing it into another baby sock pattern that one of you suggested that you said is really great. So the baby socks are going to look slightly different. I think I'm going to end up putting some rib right here where they, you know, so it can come in a little bit, so the socks might actually stay on a little bit, but it will have the same ruffle pattern on the top. So I will be playing with that later this week, and we'll see what I have to show on the next episode. I just realized that I never set my camera up how I normally have it, which is more like this. You can see my candle, and so you can't see all the random stuff that was on the floor over here. So I think it's good now, but sorry about that for the first little bit. Whoops. I'm actually sitting in a bedroom and like squished in the corner. And that's where I'm setting up right now. It's actually fine. It's great. I can have a nice quiet space, but right here is a stack of random stuff that I need to put away. So you don't need to be seeing any of that. Okay, I have another finished object for this week. Let me set this down so I don't keep pointing it. And it is right behind me, my Canada blanket. Actually, let me get it this way. It is all done. Oh, I'm so happy with it. So a little quick summary backstory on this blanket. When we were traveling in Canada from May to September of this year, we went to all 10 provinces and I wanted to make a blanket to commemorate that. So I looked for yarn, hand-dyed yarn in each of those provinces and turned them into squares. I was buying fingering weight yarn because that's, for me at least, the best way to get those special hand-dyed colors. Sorry if you can hear Toaster. Ken is going in and out of the house right now. So I got fingering weight skeins that I held double to create DK weight to use the yarn faster. And then I made one solid granny square using the Battenberg blanket pattern. and 1 patterned granny square using the Yorkshire crochet along blanket pattern. And that turned into this blanket. Now the squares were all completed before we got back here to Tennessee. I did those along the way, like over those 4 months. So I haven't done all of this in the last 3 weeks, but what I did do is join it. And sorry, it is the last 3 weeks because I have been working on this and not showing it on the podcast because I was filming a blanket vlog where I was putting everything together and wanted to save it all to share in that. So if you haven't seen the blanket vlog yet, you're about to see the whole blanket. So if you want to go and watch that first and kind of like see the process along the way, I mean, spoiler, I make a blanket at the end. I don't think that's really much of a spoiler at all. But if you kind of want to wait to see like that finished look, then go watch that first and then come back here. I think that I don't actually want to unfold this anyway, so we're just going to put a picture in here of the blanket laid out on the bed. So I ended up going with a 6x7 configuration. So 6 squares across the top, 7 squares long, and this ended up being about 65 inches wide and like 76 inches long. And that was before I added on this border, which, are you ready for it? It is so cute. So the joining technique I used is from the Yorkshire blanket, and the border I used is also from the Yorkshire blanket. That looks crazy with all of those layers. Here we go. It's so cute, scalloped with little puff stitches in it. Oh, I just love how it came out. So much fun. So essentially I spent about 10 to 12 days getting everything joined, and then I ran out of yarn, and then I ordered more yarn and got that in about a week later, super fast, and then spent another few days doing the border, and that was the joining of this blanket. So all in all, I should have looked this up, but I don't think I did before we started. I started this blanket essentially in May of this year and finished it in October, and I'm super happy with it. So 42 squares in total. It was 20 different dyers. So that kind of averages out to, you know, like a couple of yarns in each province. You always start out, or at least I always start out with like, oh, I'm going to collect these things and I'm going to get like one from each place. And that never happens. It never quite happens like this. So I ended up getting just about 1 yarn in most of the yarn stores that we went to. And then as we started getting, going west, which was like the end of our trip, I started having to narrow it down a little more. So I was still getting yarn at yarn stores, but I was getting it for different projects and not just my blanket because I didn't want to keep adding on to my blanket. At that point, I was trying to figure out, if I add 1 more color, then I'm really going to need to add like 5 more colors, right? Because I need to make a whole nother row. Anyway, you've probably heard me talk about that before. We don't need to rehash all of that. As far as yarn that I ended up needing. So for the join, I ended up using 4 skeins of fingering weight, like almost exactly. I had barely enough to finish. And I only had originally bought 4 skeins of yarn to do the join and the border. So I clearly ran out. And then I ended up needing 2 skeins for the border. That was pretty much perfect. I have my yarn, my leftovers now all organized in a Ziploc bag, but this is all I had left of my 2 skeins from the border. So really came out pretty perfect. And then I have 2 more skeins left that I will just get to use for something else someday. Maybe I'll make another blanket. Maybe I'll make a top. This is a special colorway that they dyed, Polka Dot Creek dyed for me, called Natalie's Special Pink. If you saw our Alberta vlog, towards the end there, we did a tour of their dye studio. And then they let me pick out what color I wanted to do for my border. At first I was going to do like a neutral cream or something. And then I just thought, I don't know, that just seems kind of boring. Like I've done that before with other blankets and it's been great for my other blankets, but this needs something different. And Shelly suggested taking one of their pink colors and just making it softer. And that's how we came up with this one, with Natalie's Special Pink. So I am so happy with how this came out. Like I really wasn't sure that this was going to look good once I got all of these squares together. I aimed for purples and pinks the whole time, but sometimes you just never know how it's actually going to look when you don't get all of the yarn at the same time, and I could not be happier with it. So after finishing my socks and then finishing the blanket border this week, I got back into my other blanket project, or I guess my current blanket project, which is I Quilt Too by A Little Nitty Designs. And I have made some progress, and yeah, mostly progress, but I've been a little frustrated, honestly, trying to get this pattern kind of figured out for myself. I'm being very nitpicky about it. I totally realize this, so let me explain. So this is the I Quilt Too pattern. Actually, oh my gosh, just holding it up now, it looks so good. I just looked at this so much yesterday, trying to get it just to be perfect, and it just drove me crazy. And when I just hold it up and look at it from more of a bird's eye view, it actually looks fine. So we'll get into it in a second. It looks like this. I am using A Little Wolf Knits October Countdown, which is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So Kent is opening up yarns every single day, trying to at least, and he's pairing them together for me to make into these squares, which then will turn into these little like quilt blocks, which is really fun. So I had done this one last week. I know I had done some of this. I need to figure out how to mark what I've actually done week over week, but I know for sure I hadn't done this color combination yet. So this one is partially worked together. I'm leaving one of the ends to seam with, so it's really, really long. So then I end up like wrapping it around the squares in a little bundle. So essentially, you make a bunch of squares that look like this. They're little like half triangles. You start on one end with one color, halfway through you switch to the second color. It's really easy and fun to do. It's a very memorizable pattern. You are able to make 4 squares like this out of 2 20-gram minis, which is just great. And I end up still with it having like a tiny little bit left over. So no risk of running out of yarn, which is really great, but also using up a lot of yarn. They've been perfect to take around with me. I've been knitting on them on walks. No complaints here about making the squares. It's putting them together that has been driving me up the wall. So let me kind of take you along on this journey. I did share a little bit about seaming last week, and I have tried some new things since then. So I think last week I had partially put this square together, but I hadn't woven in the ends yet. So holding this up here, I think it's a little hard to tell on camera, but can you see that things are kind of pulling in where the seams are? And maybe it's a little more obvious from the back, but things like, see this right here, how it's kind of like bulging here in the corner. I don't know. I just wasn't super happy with this. So the way that the pattern instructs to put things together is to use a mattress stitch. There is an I-cord that goes along. Did I just wrap this up? Oh no, here we go. I was like, did I just wrap this up again to make it even more difficult for myself? There's essentially an I-cord here on the edge. And so I just thought that was going to be pretty hard to seam, honestly, but it's really pretty and you want it to show, right? So I thought, you know, instead of seaming, why don't I try crocheting this together? And so for this set, I did a crochet slip stitch. So I ended up leaving one end, the last end, long enough that I could do a crochet slip stitch along the back. And I thought it looked really good until I got everything together and I was weaving in the ends. And then I realized it's kind of tight. Like it has a little bit of a stretch, probably more honestly than a mattress stitch might have. So it has like a little bit of give, but all together, it's not looking right. And I wasn't super happy with it. And so I thought, let me try something different. So on the second square, I also crocheted it, but I decided to do a single crochet instead. So here's what it looks like with the single crochet. And again, it might not be super easy to see here. I think why I'm seeing it is when you lay these squares flat, this one actually lays flat, the one with the single crochet, whereas this one bunches up, like it kind of puckers from each square, like the seam is tighter than the actual square, if that makes sense. So this one is done with a single crochet. This is my second try, and it has a lot more elasticity, like a ton of elasticity, which totally makes sense because there is more, I don't think surface area is the right word. There's more length of, you know, yarn. And so it can have more of a stretch. And it looks like this on the back. It almost looks like one of those, I don't sew, but what is it called when you do like, it's like a certain kind of stitch that does have a more elasticity. Sorry, Toaster's barking again. You may not even be able to hear it and you're just like, nothing. I'm gonna wait for him to stop. All right, I think we're good at least for a few minutes. But yeah, it has more elasticity. It kind of looks like, I don't know, one of those sewing stitches. Anyway, it still lays pretty flat. So it's not hindering the blanket integrity at all. In fact, I think it's adding to it because it has more elasticity. I do think that it separates these two strands a little bit more. If you look really closely, and it's not going to be easy to see in the camera, but there's these little like parallel lines that go in between the two I-cord lines from either side. If I kind of pull right there, see that? But I actually don't hate that. The issue that I had when I did this is I ended up with a giant hole in the middle. So I do have a picture of this. So here's a picture of what it looks like when I have crocheted each of the sides. So I've crocheted from the outside in towards the center. I've gone into every stitch and like matched them up, but I haven't sewn in the ends yet. And you have this giant hole here in the middle. So I really didn't like how that looked. And I really tried to like fuss and play with it and try to get the center to look as good as possible. What I ended up doing is after I did each seam in here, I then picked like one cross line, I guess, and I undid my last stitch, like redid it, and then I went into the same stitch from here and here. That's not making any sense. If I figure this out, I'm eventually gonna make like some kind of video to just show what I mean because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to show and I'm going nuts with it. I'm going crazy. But anyway, it ended up looking a little bit better, but you can see things are still not joined in the center. So I don't love it. In the pattern, again, it doesn't say to do any of this, right? I am like creating this technique, not creating it, but like I am trying this technique out for the first time with no go ahead to do it, right? I just want to do something that I'm going to enjoy. I know I don't enjoy seaming, but I do want it to look good. So after trying these two methods, the slip stitch and then the single crochet, I thought maybe I should just do it like the pattern says. And so I'm like, let me try at least one square where I sew things together. So I threaded my tapestry needle, I got 2 squares to sew together, and I literally couldn't figure it out. Like, I know how to seam. I know how to seam garter stitch. I know how to seam like, what is it called? Stockinette stitch. That's usually the easiest when you're doing mattress stitch. But to mattress stitch I-cord together, it just wasn't computing for me. It wasn't easy enough for me to try to do. And I'm like, if I can't even get started on this, I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to do it for a whole blanket. So I kind of ended up scrapping that idea, even though that might be the best thing to get everything to really mesh together. So that's where I ended. Yesterday, I kind of went, oh, well, I'll keep playing with it tomorrow. And that's when I started up this set of squares and started working on those. I actually am joining these with the single crochet because I do believe that the single crochet is better than, what is happening here? Than the slip stitch. And something else I figured out too that does make things a lot easier is I have started marking the first and last stitch here. So that way I know I need to start here where this marker is. This is the first stitch. There's 20 stitches in the middle and then one more. So 22 stitches across each side. So I'm getting more consistent and more even. I already joined it this way and then this end is just like waiting for me. But I don't know. It's just, there's something about it that's just not quite right. And like, I really do enjoy like puzzling things out and trying to figure out how to do a project and how to figure out how to do it in a way that looks really, really nice, but it's also rhythmic and doable for myself. And I just haven't hit that stride yet with this pattern. So I'm a little frustrated because of that. I'm a little stumped. I was looking through comments from last week's video when I was sharing some of the things that I tried, and somebody had suggested to go like all the way across when joining the seam and all the way across like this. And that way I can eliminate that kind of messy middle situation. So I had not thought about that. I think I was so in my head about using up one end from each square to seam that I'm like, I have to make 4 seams, right? Like from each of the ends. But hello, I could also just go all the way across. So I think I'm going to try that on this square and see if that really helps with the middle, because I want things to really match up and line up and look good. That's what I really want. And I want them to be somewhat easy for me to do. Is that too much to ask? It may be. It may be too much for me to ask. But this one, I'm either not going to use this one, or I will end up like taking it out and redoing the seaming at some point. I mean, I think you can kind of tell there. I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, trust me, it's different. It's different. So when I made those changes to seam with single crochet instead, I did need more yarn. So I updated my project page. Instead of measuring across, I think I had measured across 4 times before to get enough to do the slip stitches. You need 8 times the length to have enough for single crochet, but that's still just to go across one side of the square. So if I end up going all the way across, I'm going to need quite a bit more yarn than that. So I'll be playing with it even more and figuring it out next week. Something else that I did is I figured out something that I had been doing wrong in the pattern that I did not see instructions for how to do in the pattern. So I wanted to share that as like a PSA in case you're doing this one. So when I was making these beautiful socks this week, there is a stitch in them called slip 2 with yarn and back. And you basically slip 2 with yarn and back, you knit a stitch, and then you pass your slip stitches over. And that same thing is also in this pattern. I started this one before, and the way I was doing it as I was slipping 2 stitches individually, I think I was slipping them purlwise, and then I was knitting the stitch, and then I was passing those 2 stitches over separately. And it's kind of a sloppy, it didn't look very good. And that should have clued me in that I was doing it wrong. I should have looked for the instructions like in the pattern, but when I went back to look and see if they were in there, they were not in the key. So I wanted to share that and make a note of it. It triggered in my brain when I did it in this pattern because it was in the key, and they had written in there, it was like, slip 2 with yarn and back, parentheses, go look at the what is it called? Not directory. Go look at the stitch glossary to learn how to do this technique. And I went, and it was when you slip 2, you slip those 2 stitches together and you do them knitwise. So you actually go into the second stitch, then into the first stitch, and they slip off knitwise. And what this does is it creates a really nice looking like center column decrease, which is totally what is supposed to happen here, because it has this beautiful center column all the way up. So this is a square where I ended it correctly. You can see that it has that nice center column at the end. I also added the addition of purling the last few stitches together. There's like a few stitches left here at the end that you're supposed to just draw through. I didn't really like that, so I purled them together. So this is how I'm finishing things off now, to have a little bit more of a corner rather than a rounded edge. But then on, let's see if I can find one of the stitches, or one of the ones where I didn't do it right. After I learned that, I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it. Yes, maybe like here, I think. Or is that the beginning? Yeah, I think maybe like here. So it's a little hard to tell, but basically this like center column should be on top, and there's all those stitches that are on top of it instead. Whatever. I put it in my project page as well to note that that technique is probably meant to be done this way, and because it's not in the key, you may not know. So I wanted to share that as well. Okay, last thing on this project. I feel like I'm making zero sense. Oh my gosh. So as I do when I'm either getting close to finishing a project, not the case with this one, or losing some motivation and some steam, is I start to do math and I start to go, well, how long am I going to be working on this project if I do X amount per day? I just want to get an idea, because if it's going to be too long for the ambiguous amount I have in my head, then this might not be the project for me. So I'm able to do approximately 1 square per day. I usually start one in the morning with my knitting and reading, then I take it with me on my walk, and by that point I'm like just into the second color. So these do take a while. I mean, they probably take me 3 hours each to do, maybe 2.5, maybe 2. I don't know. It takes a while. So 1 a day is pretty reasonable for me. More than that, it would have to be a special day, a weekend perhaps, or when I'm doing a lot of stuff out. So if I do 1 square per day, how long will it take me to use up the 31 colors that I have? So right away, I just knocked it down to 30 because each square uses 2 colors. So there's going to be at least 1 color left out, right? So 30. And then I divided that in half because I have 15 color combinations. Is that right? Because each square uses 2 colors. I didn't do this math correctly at first. I just did 4 times 30, like 4 squares times 30 colors. And then I got a really large number and I was like, please don't let that be right. And I realized it wasn't right because 4 squares times 15 color combinations, because each square uses 2. Anyway, so 4 times 15 is 60. So if I do 1 square per day, it will take me approximately 60 days to get through all of these. That's 2 months. That actually seems reasonable. So doing that math made me feel a little bit better. I wish I had like more positive news to share about this project. I'm really hoping to get it to the point where I feel more positive about it, where it feels a little more routine. I feel like once this doesn't feel like something I'm still trying to figure out, it will quickly become my, kind of back burner project where I work on it, like I said, in the morning and on my walks. And when it gets done, which will free up my other knitting time to work on something a little more exciting. Let's get into some questions this week. The first one is from KJ Crochet. Do you ever go back and watch any of your old videos? For example, you mentioned that you don't know if you'll ever go back to eliminating stash. Would you ever go watch that journey again to see how you felt when you did eliminate stash? I thought that was such an interesting question. I basically have created like a yarn diary over the past, how many years has it been? 7 years of my life, of what I've been doing with my projects, what I've been doing with my yarn. And I have gone back to watch different videos on occasion, but it's usually when I'm looking for something specific. They've helped me out a time or two, I can tell you that. I have looked back at old videos, especially podcasts, when I'm trying to figure out what the heck I did in a project. Or one time, recently, this was last year, but it's the most recent example I can think of. I had set aside a WIP, my Salty Days sweater, and I came back to it to work on it again, and I was needing to reknit something, and I had no idea what needle size I used because I did not put it in my Ravelry project page like I normally do. And I remember I had been like messing with it, like I didn't use the size suggested in the pattern, or I thought I didn't. I honestly don't remember what the answer ended up being, but I was able to go back through my podcast episodes, and it was during a time when I had started to do the chapters like I do now. So like every project has a chapter. If you didn't know that, if you look, like hover over or if you're on your phone, I think you just tap the screen, but on the scroller bar at the bottom, there should be little chapters that says like this project, this project, this project. And I do that because it helps to not only maybe find what you're looking for or skip to sections that you want to watch over ones you don't, but also if you're trying to find something in a project, you can go to each episode and just go right to where you need to be. So that helped me out because I was able to go to several episodes, and I ended up, I think, finding it on maybe the first episode I talked about that project and I said what needle size I use, and I was like, yes, thank you. This is great. Thank you, Past Me, for saying this information, but could you put it in the Ravelry project page next time? So I have used it for things like that. I've also used it for, like, you said stash, for example, like if I'm going to go create another video that is sort of picking up on something that I left off, like let's say like when I film my next stash video, I might look back at the old stash video to kind of see maybe the format that I did, or like what my goals were for last time, or where I was at last time. But I'm always doing it more from like a creator perspective, not like let me see like what I was thinking then, and like what my mindset was, and how have that like help inform me for the next time. So that's really interesting. I have not thought about doing that. Maybe I will go back and look. Sometimes it is fun to just go through and see like the journey that you have made. I usually do this in pictures, like scrolling through old photos, like looking at what my yarn stash looked like in Texas versus what it looked like in New York versus what it looks like now. And I look back at pictures, but haven't thought to do that in videos. That's a really fun idea. I might have to take you up on that and give it a try. Okay, the next question is from, I think it's Reagan Standlick. Do you wash your projects in the washer or in a tub/sink? Also, can you find the color sheets anywhere? I live in a small town. I plan to block my sister's blanket when I am finished, since she's always cold, so I can see her using it a lot. Okay, great question about washing hand knits. So for me, I wash my hand knits in both the washing machine and in a tub or in the sink, depending on the situation. So let me break it down. And as always, you guys are welcome to share what you do for these situations as well. It's always fun to see how people like handle different things that we all do, right? We all at some point will wash our hand knitted items. So first, let's talk about socks. So socks, when I first finish my socks, I will hand wash them, and I'll get to how I do that in a second. And then I typically put them on blockers like this just to kind of get the shape. You don't really need that. It's totally not necessary. And I never do it again on socks. Like I only do it for the one time. With all new projects, I like to hand wash them because I like to see if any dye bleeds. And if dye does bleed, I do make a mental note to maybe wash those separately from other items in the future. So with socks after that, if they didn't bleed, I end up just putting them in my regular laundry bag with my clothes, and I wash them with my clothes. I used to put them in like their own little zip up like mesh bag in the washer, but now I don't even do that, honestly. It does wear them a bit faster, so if you don't have a ton of hand knitted socks or you have a particular pair you really want to keep looking really nice, I would suggest still hand washing them. But for me, I have so many hand knitted socks at this point that it's survival of the fittest. And whatever survives, survives. So I just throw them into my regular laundry bag. I typically wash my clothes on cold anyway, sometimes warm, and they're still fine. And then I just, when I'm transferring stuff to the dryer, I take out my hand knitted socks and I like put them on a hanger or like lay them over, wherever I am, whatever I have that's not going to be damaged by being a little bit damp, and I let them air dry. And that's all I do for my socks. The other reason I started washing my socks in the machine is because I started wearing them a lot harder. Like I used to just wear them at home. They didn't really get any wear. They didn't really get sweaty. And then I started wearing them to hike and to be in the van, and they started getting really sweaty and a lot of dog hair in them, and hand washing just wasn't cutting it. So that's when I started throwing them in the machine, and I've been doing that ever since. Now for everything else, I am hand washing it. And I don't like hand washing in a sink because I feel like I have to clean the sink first and I don't want an extra step. So what I have is a tub that fits in my sink. So I have this tub. It's literally just a plastic tub with handles, making it easy to lift. I have no idea where it came from. I'm pretty sure I've been using this for like 15 years, like since high school, because I think I got it from my mom. And my guess is she got it somewhere like Target or Walmart or a craft store or something. And I just took it from her. So I have this. It fits right in my sink, right under the faucet. I fill it up with water. I put my soap in there. I usually do just leave this in the sink. But then, you know, obviously when I'm done, I'm right there. I can dump it. It's just so convenient and easy to use. So that's what I like to use. I also have a smaller one if I'm doing just like a pair of socks or something. That way I don't have to use quite as much water. Try to be like very conservative with water and everything. And then your other question was about these color catchers that I talked about last week. So we had a question last week about yarn that was bleeding. I believe you were using like a white and then a darker color, and when you washed it, it bled together. So I talked about these color catchers, and I have used them quite a lot. I've never really had much dye come off on them, but the purpose of them is that you throw them in with, you can do this in your washing machine too, with like things that you didn't knit. But when you're blocking something that you've knitted or crocheted, you put these into the water and then you put your item in there, and any dye that comes off, it's gonna try to go to something. So rather, you know, you don't want it to go to your lighter color. It's supposed to be attracted to these sheets. And I was really pleased to see a couple of comments that said, you've used these and they work great. So that makes me really happy to hear. So your question was, can you get these anywhere? So I bought this box, I believe on Amazon several years ago. And since I don't use them that often, I still have a ton of them. So there's a lot in here. There's 72, at least in the pack that I got. But I also looked online and saw that at least my local Walmart and Target both have them in stock in stores. So you can always check online, like if you have a Walmart in your town or a Target nearby, or I don't know what else would carry them. I feel like those are like our big stores here, at least in Tennessee, that have cleaning supplies or laundry supplies. I don't know if a place like maybe like a Dollar Tree might have them, but they're a little bit more. I think they're more than even $5, so maybe not, but maybe another brand. Shout is not the only brand that makes them. I didn't know that. When I looked on Walmart, there were some other brands of color catchers too, so that's pretty cool. So yes, I think you can get them at multiple stores, but if not, ordering them from either Walmart or Target or Amazon might be a solution. Okay, there were several questions that were asking about how to get to my favorite Advent pattern list. And that is because I totally forgot to link it in the last episode. So I made sure to add it. I'm also going to add it down here. But I have a bundle on Ravelry that is a collection of patterns, not my own patterns, but patterns that I have seen out on Ravelry that are awesome for Advent projects. So patterns that use mini skeins, typically 24 or 12, 20-gram mini skeins. And I have been adding them to this list over the years. I think the best way probably to get to that is by finding that direct link on one of my videos. So if you just go to like my YouTube page and search Advent, in any of my Advent videos, that link is going to be in there. I think there is a way to get to it through Ravelry, but you probably have to first find my profile, and I am Natalia on Ravelry because Nitty Natty was not my like moniker when I started my Ravelry account. So if you found my profile and then went to my favorites and then went to bundles, I think you could find it that way, but that's almost harder. That's like more steps than going through YouTube. As we approach Advent season, I will be sharing that link even more often in more like video descriptions, so it will be easier and easier to find. But Advent videos and going through my profile, my favorites on Ravelry might be the two best places to find it at any time of year. And I'm putting it down below right now. Don't let me forget. Okay, I have one more question that was asked this past week, and it is going to be for you guys in the community because I don't know the answer to this question. I would love to see what you all suggest. So this question is from Mimi, I think, maybe? Mimi Yarns. The question says, do you have any recommendations for tightening up the neckband of a sweater that is stretched out over time? I have worn my worsted weight ranunculus sweater approximately 1,000,000 times, and unfortunately the neck has gotten very stretched out over time. Do you have any recommendations for a way to tighten up or cinch in the neck? I knitted the sweater with the cast on as specified in the pattern and have some of the original yarn left. Thank you in advance for any help. All right, guys, if you have any suggestions for how to tighten up this neckline, please leave them in the comments below. Some things that I have heard but not tried, so please take these with a grain of salt, is using more yarn to crochet, crochet around the neck, re-knitting the neckline entirely. Do some decreases when you do that so that you have a smaller neckline. I know something that I actually thought about for this sweater is getting like a ribbon and attaching it here and here. That probably wouldn't help cinch in your neckline. But if you do have something that tends to stretch, putting something there that is designed not to stretch can be a little bit helpful. So I didn't know how to answer this one, but if you have any suggestions, please leave them down below. That would be super, super helpful. All right, if you have any questions for me about knitting or crochet or anything else that you want to ask, please leave them down below and put #question in front so I can look out for them for my next episode. Let's end this episode with some highlights from the past week. So what have I been getting up to? Not entirely that much or anything too exciting, but there are a couple things this week that were really, really nice. So number one, my mom's birthday was this past week. And so she decided to take a couple days off of work. And she asked if I would take those days off with her too, to help her do some organizing. I love organizing. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so I said, sure, I can take some time off. So I ended up taking off Thursday and Friday, which is so nice. So I ended up having 4 days off in a row. And I can't really remember the last time that I took intentional days off. It was really, really nice. I had to plan for it, right? And it wasn't just for me, it was for somebody else. So I really did that. I really took that time off. It was really nice. So my mom and I ended up doing just a little bit of organizing and a lot of watching HGTV and just enjoying each other's company, which was honestly so much fun. It was so great. That's probably why I got so much knitting and crochet done this week, because I had that extra time. Then on the weekend, I took a nice long walk and it felt like fall and it looked like fall too. I ended up taking some pictures and I got a little video of the leaves falling in the sun. It was so, so pretty. The weather here has been a little bit up and down, as I'm sure it is everywhere. It's been cold and then it's been hot and then it's been cold again. So you just never know what you're going to get. So while I was on my walk, I was really enjoying the scenery of the changing leaves and the falling leaves. And it was just really, really stunning and beautiful. My sister-in-law and I met up with a group here in Nashville that goes on group walks all of the time. I keep meaning to meet up with this group and I just had never made the time. And so I asked her if she wanted to go with me this past weekend. So we met up with this group and we ended up going on an hour walk, met a couple new people. It was really nice. They meet in different areas, but they met this time right by a coffee shop. And it was chilly outside. So we ended up getting a latte and then taking that on the walk and chit-chatting, and it was great. A lot of times I am walking, I don't have somebody to chit-chat with. So it was really great to get to do that. And then her and I ended up going to some antique shops in Nashville after that. I am starting to think about what do I want to store my yarn in once I get to organize it when we eventually move into a new place. And so I thought, maybe I want to try finding something at an antique place rather than buying something new. I didn't really have any success in that regard, but we did see a couple cool things that I took some pictures of. So the first thing was this, I think it was maybe from a wool company or something. Anyway, it looked like a giant spool of thread, and then it had these little drawers in it also for spools of thread. It was really neat. And then the other thing we saw was this cool stacked, it was a bookshelf, I believe. It was 3 squares and they all rotated separately. And I thought that might be a really cool thing to put yarn in one day, maybe. But I also might need more space because I think I need my projects on the shelf as well. So I didn't end up getting anything, but it was so much fun to go look around. That's something I have never really done before and really enjoyed it. And then lastly, Kent and I took the van, our van Lydia, out for one more camping night. We're starting to get her ready to be stored for winter. So we needed to go get get her all the way charged up. So we need to plug in somewhere. We needed to get tanks emptied out and cleaned. There's still a lot more we need to do in the van, but that can be done at home. But there was some things we just needed to do at a campsite. So we decided to make the most of it by kind of making it a date night. So we went to the campsite nearby. We got all of our chores done, and then we went to dinner, and then we came back and we had a movie night in the van. So we watched I Know What You Did Last Summer, the new one. I haven't seen any of the old ones, but now I want to go watch them. We watched that, and we had popcorn and candy, and it was really, really great. So that's what's been happening in this last week. All right, guys, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.